Twice a year, I get a text from my mom reminding me it's time to visit my grandparents. We'll pile into a car and drive to Fremont, balancing takeout containers of whole yellow chicken and roast pork on our laps. My papa and gung gung, as I called my grandma and grandpa in Cantonese, get the best, even when they're dead. There are 2 annual Chinese holidays that see families gather in cemeteries to honor the dead. They're steeped in ritual and tradition, and for good reason. Dying is the greatest form of migration we'll ever embark on. We start by cleaning the tombstone, displaying fresh flowers, chicken, pork, fruit, candy. We silently light incense to summon our ancestors, pour wine and tea on the grave, and burn pieces of gold paper that represent wealth. It wasn't until I went to Hong Kong during one of these festivals that I realized we were totally doing it wrong. Instead of silence, my aunts and uncles talked to my great-grandfather out loud as if he were alive and present. Instead of burning pieces of gold paper, they burned pictures of cell phones, laptops, and designer jeans. They lit incense for neighboring ancestors all over the cemetery so they could join too. I watched more families emerge with huge spreads of special occasion dishes like whole suckling pigs. Yeah. They picnicked on the graves of their loved ones, gnawing on chicken bones and lighting firecrackers in the ultimate form of celebration. I asked my mom about this in Hong Kong, whether even she realized the extent of the festivities in her hometown. She said, no. Well, maybe. At this point, she's lived in the US longer than in Hong Kong, and other than her buried parents, she has no family here to show her the way. So many immigrant stories demonstrate a desire to preserve traditions, to carve out a place that feels like home in an unfamiliar land, often through food. Those are beautiful stories. Over time, I realized that isn't really my family's story. My papa and gung gung were Hakka, migratory people from the hills of northern China. Born in Hong Kong, my papa fled to the mainland during the Japanese occupation and got separated from her family. Her mom died. They think maybe she got eaten by wolves. My gung gung was born in China but fled to Hong Kong by joining the British Navy during the communist takeover. His parents stayed behind. My mom says they died from suffering. By the time my grandparents fell in love in Hong Kong, started a family, and moved to San Leandro to help take care of me as a baby, their collection of Hakka recipes had already shrunk. I asked my mom if there are Hakka or even Hong Kong-style dishes she grew up eating that she still cooks today.
I still cook. Probably not, not very much because I simplify.
I did grow up eating Chinese food, but I doubt it was the sort of Chinese food my ancestors ate. Tomatoes with eggs, broccoli beef, mushu pork wrapped into flour tortillas. It's on my dad's side, though, where I feel the bigger sense of cultural loss. His dad was Russian and Jewish, but born in Japan. The war brought his family to Shanghai, which was one of the safest places for Jews at the time. But then it was no longer safe. He eventually made it to North Carolina and met my grandma. She was a classic Southern belle, raised on a small farm in Georgia. Fresh food was a way of life for her. So much so that when the family moved to the Bay Area, it pained her to make her favorite Southern dishes. The produce just wasn't the same. As part of a typical nuclear family in the 60s, my grandpa rarely cooked dinner. So my dad didn't grow up with Russian, Jewish, Japanese, Chinese, or Southern food at home. He remembers pierogi and beef stroganoff from his grandparents, and when his dad did get in the kitchen, he'd excitedly make a big bowl of borscht. Those dishes never made their way to me, though. That said, I'm not doing any better. The Chinese dishes I cook on a regular basis are not ones I grew up eating. They're just what I like. It makes me wonder, what will I serve my kids? Will my mom's food traditions disappear after just one generation in the US? How many generations does it take to become another culturally ambiguous American family? Is migration the death of traditions? My parents secured a plot at the same cemetery in Fremont. My mom hopes I'll still visit for holidays without her being alive to prompt me. I'm honestly not sure if I will. After all, it's been tough for even my mom to keep the traditions alive. She remembers going to the cemetery shortly after her mom died on a windy, lonely day, desperately trying to light a match.
I try, I don't even remember how many times. I was getting very worried. I was just thinking, God, I can't even, strike a flame to light the incense. How terrible it is. I can't even offer incense to my parents. So I remember those times. And it's at those times I wish I have people around me.
I think it's reasonable for my mom to tailor these annual holidays to her modern lifestyle. In a way, these evolving traditions represent her passage from her old life in Hong Kong to this one. Similarly, my various cultural roots are not dead. My life would be unrecognizable to many of my ancestors. So why should the traditions stay the same? My family will continue to create new ones. They're not wrong, they're just different. Thank you.